Hi everybody, my name is Cindy Crum. I'm the CEO of MobileMoxie based in Denver, Colorado. We do mobile SEO consulting as well as ASO consulting, and we have an amazing SEO tool set dedicated to mobile. So today, you might not be surprised to learn that I'm talking about SEO and digital empathy in crisis, and that's going to be especially focusing on things that can be impacted by mobile. So let's start with some basics and the idea that things have changed since COVID happened, right? And for some companies, it's been good, but for most companies, it's been bad. And the estimates as of April 22nd show that 24% of companies expected a decrease of revenue that was 25% or greater. 29% expected a decrease of revenue of 10% to 25%. And then way over here, only 20% expected an increase in revenue or no change at all. So COVID is definitely changing the situation that we face as marketers. And that includes things like ad traffic. So what you can see here is that in April, we saw a great increase in Google display ads, but even bigger in YouTube and even bigger in shopping. So people are doing more on their computer, and so they're triggering more ads and ad traffic. So that can be good and potentially used to your advantage if you're a marketer. But the other thing to know is that it's changing things for consumers as well. Consumers, especially if they're shopping in places where prices are easy to change, like Amazon and Google Shopping, people are experiencing shortages and wide fluctuations in prices. Things that were $100 are now $300 or $400 in some cases, and most, or they just can't be found at all. And most of the platforms are trying to minimize that, and they don't want to see price gouging, but just know that your average consumer probably has experienced some of this in their life already. So that's changing the way they think about online shopping. Other things is just that search queries are changing. This one's obvious. Takeout near me versus restaurant reservations. Takeout near me is way, way up. Restaurant reservations are way down. And so Google even actually created a tool to help people manage or kind of monitor which kinds of categories of information are trending. And what we know is that, things to do with the home and making the home more enjoyable are trending quite a bit. That includes these things like swimming pools, swimming accessories for making your home pool more exciting, but it's also things like at-home baking and at-home exercise classes and stuff like that. So the trends and the things that people need are changing. And that's also changing how people interact with things like Google My Business, where in this graph we see that the blue up here is people who are clicking on directions. So that's way down. People are not driving as much, but there's a pretty big increase in people who are clicking from a GMB listing over to a website, and also an increase in people who are calling businesses, who are clicking on a GMB link to call. And this is, of course, probably to see if they're open, if hours have changed, to verify whatever information might be available online about a particular business. So when we think about empathy in terms of marketing and in terms of how people interact digitally with companies, this is the kinds of things that we want to think about. Is we need to anticipate what are people nervous about, what are they unsure of, what kinds of information would make them feel more comfortable interacting with a business. As people start to emerge, they want to be careful to protect their own health, but they also just want to follow the rules and know that the companies that they're choosing to interact with are also following the rules. So to be an empathetic marketer in this kind of situation, in this kind of a crisis, it's really critical that we actively communicate all of these things, related to changes, related to behavior and expectations and stuff like that. So the main thing that I think I want to impress upon people is that the website is not the only place that you can do this. And in fact, especially if you're dealing with budgets that are cut, employees that are off or furloughed, or even out sick, we could have companies that are experiencing really slow times to update their website, or having a really hard time getting updates done to the website. But what I want to encourage you to do instead, or along with that, is to update your Google My Business listing, because these are going to be where people go first to check and see what is the status of a company. And especially, companies that are national or international, people may not trust this one big website to be representative of the location that's near them. And people, for whatever reason, do tend to trust Google My Business listings a little bit more because they can be more customized, and they assume that everything Google says is right. Whether or not that's true, often, of course, we know it's not. But what I want to encourage businesses to do is communicate as much as possible using Google My Business, because it's easy, it doesn't require development, and it's likely where people are going to check first. So this article from Search Engine Land talks about how the usage went down, especially during the height of the COVID pandemic, but they expect it to be more powerful after. And this is because people need to verify the situation of individual businesses, because the rules can change from, of course, city to city, state to state, but also in some cases county to county. So the power of GMB is likely on the rise, and it's a great way to consider your customers and act with empathy by communicating there where they're most likely to go first. And so if we think about local businesses, the example here on the left shows the Eiffel Tower, and it shows it's temporarily closed. And you can do things like that, or should have done things like that if you were temporarily closed, or if you intend to remain temporarily closed, depending on where you are. You can communicate that immediately with a couple clicks of a button through GMB. You can also add in these new special kinds of modes of operation. So this one shows dine-in, takeout, no contact delivery, and they keep adding more and more things here, and you get sometimes different ones depending on what kind of a business you are. Some have drive-through, some have curbside service. So make sure that you go and set those to communicate so people feel comfortable knowing, okay, so I can't plan on dining in, but I can plan on taking out, and there is no contact delivery, or I can order online, or I can order online and pick up in the store. There are a lot of different options that you can specify here, and if customers know what they can and can't do, they're going to feel more comfortable interacting with your business. And this can be a bigger thing if you're an international business, because you have so many different locations and so many different stores to deal with in terms of communicating this properly. So the examples here are like Zara and Target. And so in cases like this, it may be more important to, number one, go through and update all of your locations, but number two, monitor them and see that you've ticked all the important boxes, and that modes of operation that you haven't popped up, because Google is really actively changing what the kinds of different checks and X's are that you can get. But of course, they're changing it at the same time as local laws, stores, regulations, recommendations are changing. So just really stay on top of this, and it is a much bigger deal for international businesses. But like I said, the people are even more likely to want to know granular information from something like a GMB, because it can be hard for the website to be updated quickly enough to accurately represent what's happening in each individual store. So just be sure that you're looking into these different kinds of operation, modes of operation. And what we try and do for our customers is put as many green checks as possible. If there's a reason to put a no, because it's something that you're getting a lot of calls about, then I would do it. But the more positive responses you can give is better. And then for some things, if it's an X and it's not something that you would think of intuitively, we just leave that blank, because with each of these options, you have 3 potential toggles. You can say check yes, X no, or you can just not show it. So in some cases, we'll prefer to not show a negative response and just show more green checks, because that makes people feel like, oh, okay, they're doing good, they're up and operational, versus having lots of X's. It feels less encouraging. That might just be psychological, but that's how we've been doing it. So update this, keep it updated, watch closely to make sure, and make sure you're also using posts or using the special COVID post option to communicate anything about COVID. So you can manually change your hours of operation, but in the hours section, but you might also put a note if they're likely to change, or if there's a chance that they'll change, or just kind of replicate it and say, hey, our normal hours are this, but we've switched to this until further notice, things like that. You can be a little bit repetitive, but also include notes about safety protocols. You can also put images of the safety stuff that's happening, employees in masks, people scrubbing things, lots of pictures of hand sanitizer, stuff like that. And then just explain what are your protocols and how do you handle situations. And of course, this is going to be different based on what kind of business you are and where you are and what the expectation or legal requirements are. But just say, hey, all of our employees are required to wear masks and gloves, or we give our employees new masks every day. Or you can even, in your COVID post, you can say things about how great your company is treating employees during this time. Say, we really love our employees, and that's why we're giving everyone a hazard pay bonus. We're giving everyone free masks and gloves and sanitizer, and we do health screenings every morning, or whatever it is that you want to say. But I think that there is the possibility to not just be sterile and say we're following the rules, but you can say we care about our employees and this is what we've done for them, or we haven't furloughed anyone, or we have and we need your business to help. Whatever it is that you think your customers might benefit from knowing is good to put there. And I think you get a very long, it might be unlimited, you get a very long amount of characters in that COVID post. So this is what the checks and the X's look like, and you can do it obviously for other things too, but this is the part that gets you the checks and the X's that show up in the map listing. So you can see here we have curbside delivery, in-store pickup, in-store shopping, or same-day delivery, and they've added a couple more, but this is where you would get to it from your GMB listing. This is from Darren Shaw of Whitespark. He pointed out in a recent webinar that there's been, with his customers at least, a big increase in people using messages in GMB instead of calling. They want to communicate, ask questions about how the business is coping or what the rules are, things like that. So you might need to enable this or try it out. What's nice is you can set up a welcome message. So whenever someone sends their first message, they get the welcome message. And you can put some specifics in here if they're specific to the location. You can say, for this location, hi, thanks for contacting us. Our new hours are this. And we expect this, but let us know if you have any further questions or anything you want to do there. You have 120 characters. So that's a great way to start conversations with your customers, being empathetic. The thing with this one is you have to have someone monitoring it, so they need the GMB app on their phone. And it's hard to restrict when people will communicate with you. They might communicate with you when you're normally closed. So there are pros and cons here, but overall, it might be worth a try for a lot of different businesses. Darren also talks about the changes in local rankings. Just know that whatever was happening before COVID in terms of your local rankings might not be exactly the same anymore. There were a lot of changes and have been a lot of changes to how companies are ranking during the time of COVID. So it makes sense to watch and do checks to see how you're ranking and to compare, because that will impact the number of people interacting with your GMB profile, the people getting to your website, the people calling, stuff like that. If you're not ranking, or if you're ranking really low, you're going to get less traction. The other thing that they announced, Joy Hawkins announced just today, is that they're seeing kind of lulls in the GMB reporting in terms of traffic. So there might be something wrong there where it's not actually showing traffic recently. It stopped. So don't let that completely bum you out. It might just be worth testing. And so we created a tool that lets you test rankings from anywhere in the world. So you can see we've picked like Havasu City, Arizona, and we wrote, is Chase Bank open? That seems like a normal kind of COVID test. And what you can see here is we have two phones side by side. We have two different phones, but you could pick two of the same phones. But these are real interactive search results. And on the left here, what you can see is we've clicked through to the Chase Bank listing that looked right. And on the right, we clicked to the one that said, there might be a problem with this listing. And what the problem was they hadn't updated their hours. So there's a link in here that allows people to suggest hours. So this is something you should be doing, is making sure that you're updating your hours to let people know. For sure when you're open. But this is a really handy tool to test if you're doing SEO or doing marketing for locations that aren't by you. You can see real live mobile results and even click through using the MobileMoxie. It's called the Serperator. And we have it available for free on the website in the free tools list. You get 5 tests per day. So that's pretty great, just to kind of spot check, see how things look in the results, click through, see how they look in GMB, and make sure all of your information is correct. Because what can happen is you can update GMB, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time for that to get published. So it's often good to know exactly what other people are seeing. And of course, our tools are not logged into your account, so they're going to get exactly what anyone else would get from wherever they are. So they're location sensitive and all that stuff. So that's pretty handy for spot testing. We also have the ability in the paid version of the tools to test over time and to upload a whole spreadsheet of different addresses and test in a radius. So that's just something to know about, to see, you know, how things look, not just at your address, but standing in increments away. So 10-mile increments is what we do. And again, you can see this goes all over the world, Norway, New Zealand, whatever. So you can test anywhere and get the real life clickable results. And then just so you know, we saw a decent need for testing over time and comparing over time. So we created a new version of the tool that's not out yet, but this is what it's gonna look like soon, and you're going to be able to see the historical screenshots side by side. So down here you can see this is a restaurant that was temporarily closed, and we've been tracking it for a while, and so these are the historical ones. So we can go back and see exactly when did Google register us as closed, and you can see it's right over here. The furthest to the right, it was open this day and now it's closed, and you can kind of scroll through and see how has that changed, what has the look of the GMB listing looked like for a while. When did it change? So this one changed over April 1st, or excuse me, May 1st, and has remained closed. So that's just a good way to track how those things look and when things change. And helps you potentially be empathetic for your customers to know, oh, they probably got confused because our information wasn't right the whole time, you know? The other thing you can do that's great with GMB is enable donation and gift card purchases. This is especially good for restaurants and companies that had to entirely close down, but are trying to remain open, not declare bankruptcy, not put people on furlough. Selling the gift cards or allowing donations from your GMB listing is super easy to set up. You, again, don't have to hire a developer to do it, and you can continue to engage with your most loyal customers, even in times when you're closed or have limited hours or just really need their support. Last, of course, you can and should be updating your website with all information that you can. The tools that I showed you that track search results can also check and test pages. So if you wanted to, you could go back and, set something like this up to test moving forward. How were we communicating about this? When did our communication change? Things like that. So that's kind of handy and helps you kind of understand where people are coming from with their questions. And then, of course, using PR and social media to announce any changes, because remember, you're really tuned in to what your company is doing, but everyone else is just a casual observer. So you might need to reach out to them, not just on your website, not just in GMB, but in a more active way with announcements. And that can be like this one, Sprouts, which is a local organic grocery store in Colorado. They changed their pickup options, and this made the local TV news station, and it went out on their Twitter campaign, or it went out on their Twitter feed as a story. Stuff like this is actually useful. And if you're a company that especially has a local following or a loyal local base, and reaching out to the local newspapers about the changes in your operations can be a really great way to get some free press and free exposure, and make sure that you're doing everything that you can to get your changes noticed, because maybe people search Google for Sprouts pickup options, and hopefully the GMB would rank, hopefully the website would rank, but if they didn't, then this kind of thing gives you another opportunity to rank and get your message out to the people who are wanting to interact with your brand. So don't forget about that. And then remember that empathy means that you're not just thinking about customers, but you're thinking like customers. And so that means that you're doing any kind of test searches or kind of the same behavior that a real user might do if they did not know anything about what was going on with your company. And this can be especially interesting because Google is changing things country by country in how they present search results. So if you're an international company, like in this case, we're pretending to be an airline. If you're an airline that's reaching international travelers, note that this is the exact same query from the exact same place. We're doing the search from Rio de Janeiro, and we're searching for travel to Rio de Janeiro from Denver and from Rio. When you search from the US, you get this COVID travel warning. When you search from Rio, you don't. And so doing the test searches can help you understand what might be preventing people from bookings. So maybe your traffic, your SEO traffic from certain countries has gone way down. Perhaps it's this big red warning that is causing people not to click at all, even if your ranking hasn't changed, even if everything else hasn't changed. Warnings like this can change behavior. So know kind of what people might be getting when they're searching, what Google might be injecting into search results. And then remember that language can also change the results. So this is an English search result for Nike, and you can see we've got the product carousel, we've got locations, we've got a big Twitter thing. Facebook, Wikipedia, Twitter again, YouTube, and we've got a knowledge graph and then related searches at the bottom. But then if we do the exact same search, still from Dakota City, Iowa, everything is the same. Except that we've changed the phone language to Spanish. What you see is we have a shorter top navigation. We still have the products and the map results, but then we have people also searched for, a news result, and no knowledge graph here at the bottom. So just know that just changing a default language, even if the query is the same, the query in both of these cases was Nike, you might be getting different search results that could change people's impression of the company, change people's behavior, stuff like that. So if you're marketing to people in a place where there are multiple languages spoken, remember that people don't change their phone language even if they search in multiple languages. So if my native language is Spanish, but I'm fluent in English as well, I'm not toggling between English and Spanish settings on my phone. I just put them into Google, but that can actually change the results. When everything else is the same, the default language setting can change. So it's less critical in places like the US, where there's a really strong preference for English, but in places where people are very multilingual, language fluid, what have you, and there are multiple languages spoken frequently, knowing that the language setting can change the result even when the query is exactly the same, even when the physical location is exactly the same, means that it's worth testing and worth knowing to really understand what are people seeing when they search for your company. And also, it's not just that the knowledge graph can change, come in or out when you search with a different language, but the knowledge graph itself can actually change. Even if you don't speak Spanish, Spanish on the right, English on the left, you can see that when I search for COVID testing near me with the different language settings, Google is putting the knowledge graph in the setting to match the phone, not to match the query language, but these results are actually quite different as well. You can see that they're very long and that they don't have the expanders. So knowledge graph can change as well as just its presence or absence can change. So this really is going to affect your ability to get traffic. If there's a knowledge graph, it's going to take a lot of attention, especially if it's at the top. Less so if it's at the bottom like Nike, but still good to know. And then last part is just using empathy with your paid email and SMS. This means understanding that people might be nervous and trying to set them at ease, trying to get them the information that they need as quickly as possible. So this example shows Abercrombie & Fitch. It's an email, and it says, see if your store is open. So this is acknowledging that there are different situations for all of the stores, and you need to find the store near you and get the most recent updates. So it's likely also assuring you that when you click through here, you're going to get the most updated information, and that maybe this might be more trustworthy than going to Google, perhaps. Also, if you do paid, doing things like setting it up for pickup today, and these people, Best Buy have even added this curbside pickup option into their paid results. That can be huge because, as we talked about earlier, some things are in high demand and hard to find, and of course, when things are still closed, it can be hard to get what you need, and ordering things online can be iffy and take time. So knowing that you have curbside pickup and you can get it today might be hugely compelling for this product, which you can see it is the most expensive version of this HDMI cord. But I would say in the pandemic time, it is also the most likely to get purchased right now. Or at least potentially if someone's not afraid to drive in and do curbside pickup. There are also great examples of companies pivoting to do slightly different kinds of businesses, and that's something, of course, you should be emailing people about. So this is Panera. They've actually been stellar during the pandemic. They have the code for free delivery, and they're offering not just meals for one person at a time, but big family meals. They also pivoted to start selling some groceries, existing pipelines. Where they already had food being delivered to them. They could break it up and sell it individually or sell it to families as fresh produce rather than, and they could keep their employees on because they're still making money rather than just completely shutting down. So this is a good strategy. This is an example of explaining about store policies. So they say we wear a mask, we care about people and their risk classes, and we're actively washing hands and just making people feel more at home. And again, the find an open store option. But this is very empathetic because it gives us a feeling that they do care, that they are trying to protect us, and that they're slowly opening up. And it gives us a lot of different information about the safety protocols. And so this is great for your most loyal customers to explain to them exactly what's going on and encourage them and make them feel like they're going to be safe when they come back in. And you can also do similar things with SMS. You can see the one on the right is from Best Buy, encouraging people to buy things online and do curbside pickup, doing still sales and stuff like that. Text messages great for people who are not back at work yet, who have lost their jobs because they may have lost their primary email address. They may not be checking email as much as they were. So using text messages, especially when you can include these links that have images that can pre-populate, that can also be super compelling, and it's empathetic because it knows that you might not be checking email as frequently if you're still dealing with all of the other aspects of lockdown, whether it's teaching homeschool or just the lack of a computer, lack of an email, those kinds of situations. So that's that. I hope you have learned something and got some new thoughts on SEO and digital empathy in time of crisis. If you want to try any of those tools that I demoed, we have 30 days free with the promo code COVID-19, and thanks for your attention. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. To be notified about future videos, click the logo. And to try the MobileMoxie mobile SEO toolset, use the promo code YouTube to get 30 days free. They're mobile-first SEO tools for a mobile-first world.